Hello, everyone. This is Marita, one who catches lightning, with the Path of Ish podcast, Walking with Our Shadow, where we share ancient Indigenous teachings of remembrance, all so we can walk and learn how to walk a path of radical self-love. Welcome, everyone, to another opportunity to step into the circle, to listen, to observe, to stay curious, to be courageous, and always playful. Today, it is my honor, great honor, to be in the circle and inviting to the circle a best-selling author and an amazing medicine woman, Asha Frost. Hello, Asha. How are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Asha, we will begin as we begin all things with the stories and the words that have created us. So, in your own words, what is your creation story?
Nandre Nagri of Queen Dishnakas, Nation Agamingin Dunjaba, Ajijak Dodam. My spirit name is Healing Rainbow Woman, Rida Adun Anamkika, and most recently I received She Who Walks on a Path of the Thunderbirds. My English name is Asha, and I'm from Nation Agaming, First Nation. My ancestors come from First Nations across so-called Ontario. And my creation story calls me back to the soles of my feet, to the earth and Turtle Island and the shell that is beneath the soles of my feet. I believe that Creator saw me as a spark of divine medicine as Creator sees everyone. And that part of my path or mission was to be a bridge to bring all beings together in understanding and compassion. Part of my creation story is as a sensitive being, one who feels things deeply upon this earth. And of course, being called up as a medicine person or healer, walking in a way where I'm always reflecting on what is most healing for me and what I need to reflect in myself. And somehow the wisdom comes from that place, from self-reflection and introspection, and walking in a good way with my ancestors. And I feel my ancestors surround us as we speak here, just reminding us that they dreamed us here, they dreamed me here to express and soar and be walking in the fullness of my medicine. So that's what I feel today about my creation story.
That is beautiful, and in gratitude to your ancestors for being here. Now, you have many relations and relationships, and one of them in your book that you wrote, You Are the Medicine, you speak of course, the relationship of the moons. When was the first time you fell in love with the moon?
That's such a beautiful question, because I feel like I continue to fall in love with the moon. I feel like as a young child, I would always, and maybe this is true for everyone, but exclaim, look at the moon, look at the beauty, when you'd have those harvest moons or those like pink moons, or it would just seem to be so big in the sky. And my mother was always so amazing at holding space for my awe and my enchantment, because she was enchanted too. So I think it was such a beautiful space to expand my capacity for magic and the beauty that was in our sky, Kin. And that moon, I probably was really young, and it just continued from there. It still enchants me when I see her.
You said something beautiful there, is awe, and we speak a lot about this in this podcast, that we have an opportunity, I think, as we are growing and developing in many nations, to really go from this idea that people have grasped as mindfulness and back to awe. In your own words, how can people walk away of awe?
Ooh, that's such a beautiful question. I think it's something about reclaiming your child essence, the one that Where your eyes, I have young children still, and their eyes still sparkle when they see something magical. And I think that there's a point in our lives where maybe we get disconnected from that. And I think it's a reclamation of that child self that believed and that saw the magic in everything. So that's part of the reclamation. And also, yeah, I never thought about that with mindfulness. I think presence is so important. And we now more than ever need to come back to presence in our moments and just opening our eyes and our hearts really wide to all of the beauty around us. And it seems like, I guess it's like a simple invitation, but I think in our world of distraction, it can be really challenging.
There was recently a post that I read that spoke about how Indigenous people are taught by their elders silence.
Mm,
That is not something that is taught in the Western world. In the Western world, it's all about speaking and over speaking and kind of explaining yourself. And I'd love to see, how has silence taught you awe, observation, and given you the potential or the magic to stay in that awe?
mm. Silence is beautiful. I think about stories my mother told me about when she would go visit children in the First Nations really far up north in the remote areas, and how much in that observation place they would be, and perhaps not even making eye contact because they'd be so connected to their inner world. And, in our colonized world, we teach eye contact is most important, and kind of being in other people's spaces versus that introspective space. So I believe that our Indigenous ways of knowing and being, even if it's not passed down to us, is to be a little bit more of the observer and the quiet one and the silent one. And that was me growing up. My teachers would always say, "Why doesn't Asha contribute? Why is she not speaking up?" And my mom would really advocate for me and say, she's in her Indigenous ways of knowing and being, which is to be quiet. So I think that you're right. I think that that quiet opens us all. It to me, it connects to that restful place. We've been colonized out of the dream time, the vision time, the sitting with the land time. All those times are in quiet. And all of those times open us up to a greater sense of our connection to spirit. That's the time I get the most information, is when I sleep. My dreams are filled with teachings, and we've all been colonized from that teaching. So to me, silence is connected to rest as well.
As you speak about dreams and silence, and there is this energy of rejuvenation that I hear. And yet, many times, the colonization of our dreams means work and overwork.
Mm.
So, what are the relations that can help us to keep our dreams rejuvenating? How can we stay in that place even when we are awake, to not pursue?
Mm. I think it's really challenging in this current world. I believe in the unfolding. I believe in the great mystery. In my experience, the great mystery is will touch us when we're not hanging on so tight and not hustling or pushing or intending or setting goals. The great mystery touches us in those moments of silence, but that can't happen if our schedules are full, or um, we're just filling ourselves with the to-do list, I guess. So for me, it all comes down to the great mystery. And the great mystery touches me the most when I let go and have a death. And that can feel really painful or hard. But when I go deep into that letting go process and have death and releasing things or cutting cords, the great mystery just has all the space to touch me. So that's my biggest lesson that I've had. I tend to be a holder honor. So when I've actually let go and brought things to death, the most magic has touched me.
Now, you are in the time of winter, and it's a little bit colder where you are than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so, winter, our environment, nature holds us in a certain rhythm. How has the rhythm of living where you live and the nature been able to support a practice of change, silence, and death?
Mm. Well, it gets very dark here very early. It's just starting to get lighter. But in the morning, I notice our animal bodies. Me and my children, we don't want to get out of bed. And I noticed this. And on the solstice this year, I just thought I'm gonna let everybody sleep in. So it's practice for me too, because we live in a world where we have deadlines and times to get up and times to get to school and all the things. So it's actually intentionally practicing. Oh my goodness, our bodies, our animal bodies are listening. We're like the bear, we're in hibernation. There's less light. There's more space for resting and sleeping and dreaming. And of course, like many who probably are listening, you know, we have to get up to work. So for me, it's like intentionally practicing lying down for maybe 2 minutes when I'm feeling tired, really listening to my body, setting boundaries, saying no to many more things than I would say no to maybe in the spring or summertime. And really just following the signs of my body, which right now I hear everybody around me saying, I'm so tired. And I think, yes, of course you are. I mean, everyone in the Northern Hemisphere who's in wintertime. Of course you are. You're meant to be. Your body is just simply in alignment with that cyclical living. And I just wish we had more space to actually be in that.
I love that you're meant to be tired as part of the cycle of life. So many times we just push it down, caffeinate, do whatever we can to push through. How have you been able to sit without pushing through? You said you hold on, right? And what has taught you that? What are the relationships in nature that have taught you how to just sit?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I think when I do go for a walk or I commune with nature, I feel like nature's always teaching us that, and with the leaves falling off the trees and the bareness, there's death there, with the brownness coming over the land. Especially where I live, the seasons are very strong and the change is like quite profound. So I always think that's interesting too, that I live in an area of the world where each season is it really, we go deep into each season and we come out of each season. There must be a reason for me to experience that and to really feel it in my bones. But I have to say also in my life, people really teach me this, like relationally, it tends to be part of my soul path to learn from human relationships and experiences what it's like to have people just leave your life, especially as myself, who I want to hold on. I want to cultivate relationships. I want to keep people tight and held. And I've experienced that a lot of sort of just people just leaving. So that's been a really huge lesson for me. Nature, when I'm witnessing it, seems a little more gentle than sitting with the human experience of loss.
I love that you say that because I feel that many times many people are afraid of nature. And
Mm.
we are in a time where nature's speaking very loudly around the world, and people don't know how to hear that. So I love that you live in extremes and yet you find the extremes of nature, the loudness of her very, more comforting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In that way, yeah. It holds me. I think that the land always holds me, and the land remembers me. I feel most at home there.
Hmm. When you speak of people who are not held by land, I recently watched a TikTok where someone was covering a song in Spanish. And it was really interesting. And he's like, I don't know Spanish. And he covered the song. He's like, how well did I do? And I was like, you don't have the land because this song speaks of the land of Mexico, las tierras, los montes, las albas, and I was like, I could tell him that he didn't have the land, the experience of the land. And so, how do you speak to people who don't have the land in their bones to create a deep connection like that?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because I don't live on the lands of my ancestors directly. The First Nations that my ancestors are from are probably 3 hours or 5 hours away. But I do feel that connection. So sometimes it's hard for me to explain because I have it's so cemented in my bones and blood. And I've never not experienced that. So I've had to practice, I guess, empathy or compassion or trying to be in another's body almost to see what would that be like if that was not connected, in that way. But the way that I do in my communities is by journeying, doing medicine journeys, um, and really asking for that memory to come forward. There is memories in everybody's bones and blood. There's memories in our dream time. So sometimes the journeying is the quiet time. And then as I kind of invoke that for folks, I feel like there's like a light that turns on, that they can feel it. They can feel some sort of rootedness or their roots extending to their ancestral lands, even if they don't know exactly where they are, the cultures that were practiced, or any of that. I think that takes practice. I think you can practice it. You can commune with your ancestors. You can do that, as you said, through the silence and the quiet. Those are the moments that build that relationship. So my work a lot is about that, doing your spirit work and that reconnection. And I believe we all have access to that in certain ways.
This morning when I was with a group, you're singing to the ocean and to the winds and to the rising of everything. Someone shared how not only do they dream of whales, right? We dream of things, but the relationship of the whales dreaming them.
Mm,
And it stayed with me. And as you keep, continue to, I almost feel like this conversation is almost in dream time.
mm,
How can we share that image or that possibility that the lands that we yearn for or the connections that we yearn for, they are also being dreamed by the whales and the trees and the mountains and the rivers.
mm. Doesn't that just sound beautiful? I just have to take a pause there because that just brought tears to my eyes. I just think it comes back to that understanding that we are really all connected in that way, and I believe Indigenous people see all of creation as kin, like
Hmm.
really dropping into that is my sibling, that is my auntie, that is my Nokomis, my grandmother, those we actually see all of creation through that lens. And again, I guess I don't want to be colonized about that, but thinking it in that way, it's like a feeling, like, putting your belly to the trunk of a tree and saying, hello, my grandfather, or hello, my auntie, and just connecting in that way, like the waters singing to us, right? Yeah, the waters know you, they remember you, they're grateful that you've connected to them. I think there's so much beauty there. So even as you said that, imagine we all just imagined all of creation dreaming about us and inviting us into connection. If that was our mission every day, I think the world would be a different place.
Yes, and I think it would allow us to know that how our dreams with and us being dreamed is what we are living,
Indeed.
and I think if we start being able to connect that way as we are looking at climate crisis, that maybe what Mother Earth is doing is trying to dream for us a better place. She hasn't stopped dreaming of the humans on her belly. So, you said something that I kind of want to get into a little bit. How can we break the cycle of separation? That cycle, that colonized cycle of separation.
Just as I sit with your words, I feel that vibration in my heart. I wish I could put this into words because it just feels like this vibration, this energy in my heart. I'm always curious about why we can't all keep soft hearts, open hearts. I'm curious about how our hearts get closed or shut down or broken or disconnected. I long for to be in a relationship with people who keep their hearts open and keep them soft. And especially in the last couple of years, as there have been many sort of divisive type of conversations, it's been an invitation for us to sink back into our heart. And I don't know how well we all did with that, but I believe that that's where it comes back to. And that's what we're called to do. And I know sometimes that sounds kind of airy fairy. And for me, it's just an invitation to sit with one another as though we sit in a circle. I always think if we brought these conversations that sometimes happen online that become kind of maybe a little toxic, if we sat and brought them into healing circle and passed an eagle feather around and shared, and we saw each other's hearts and each other's eyes and each other's spirits, how different the world would be. So I dream of a place where we can kind of sit in this energetic circle and come back to the heart.
Well, I dream with you, and you said something really, I think, important, and it's something that we kind of opened up the circle with that we try to do here is to stay curious.
Mm.
How curiosity really is a superpower, and curiosity is also very animalistic. I have a lot of animals on this farm. And I see their curiosity. Sometimes I'm annoyed by it, because they're going to get into trouble. But there's something animalistic about curiosity that we have lost. And you mentioned, if we could sit in a circle, the ability to be held by a circle, but with eagle feather. Eagle, always represents that higher perspective, that view from above. What other animals and animal relationships can help us stay curious?
Mm. I just got an image of all your animals like doing curious things, which just looks so adorable to me. I the other thing I wanted to mention first was just about repair, because I think too, like being open to repair, which connects to curiosity a little bit for me. But I think for me, it comes back to that compassionate place. So I think deer medicine is one that speaks to me deeply because it's walked with me for my entire life. And deer medicine invites in like gentleness for self, because every conversation I've had that's been challenging, the thing I notice the most is when it gets confrontational is when we're not holding compassion for ourselves. And then defensiveness comes over, or some other energy takes over. But if we can kind of lean back and have deer medicine surround us with that, you are enough, you are doing your best, let's soften into this, I think that that can open our heart to curiosity. So deer is the first one that I see. When I see eyes, so I'm not sure, but the second one, deer comes really strongly. Maybe it seems like a water animal from here. So I see like beaver or muskrat or weasel or something that's in the water. Maybe bringing us back to that water medicine, paying attention to the water that flows within us. And then, oh, they're playing. That's what it is. It's otter. It's like a playful animal. So yeah, just learning how to return to play.
Yeah, we speak a lot about, curiosity, courage, and play as really kind of a way to break the cycle of needing to know. And so, what are ways that we can enter into curiosity, courage, and play? What are the pauses or the silences that can hold us or to shift, to shift that equation that we so quickly go down? Do you have any suggestions in your own life?
I think for me, it's always about getting back into my body. If I find myself getting too much in my mind, or I think it's about like getting back in my body and doing things like dancing or going for a walk. Like it's just this embodiment feeling. And I do still think it kind of connects me back to my childlike self. Like I watch my two little boys who they are so busy and active and in their bodies. And I see how they just move so much through their bodies. And it's such a good teaching for me. So for me, curiosity and play comes back to just being in my heart and then perhaps dancing it out, shaking it out, going for a walk. It just shakes me out of my headspace. And that's really important for me.
How is the invitation to embody or be in the body one that can be how can I say this? I'm thinking in Spanish now. A more welcome, I guess, invitation, a more simple invitation, since we live in a colonized Western culture of disembodiment, of fracturing, right? And then you also have on top, people who struggle with their body, right? Who struggle with illness. And I know you can speak to that. How do we, I guess it's a two-part question. First, the colonized disembodiment, and then the second one is how can we welcome the body that we do have?
Hmm. Yeah, I've really been on a journey of that. I think having a chronic illness for so long and living in a body that hasn't always felt good to live in. So practicing loving or honoring that body has been a huge challenge on my journey. The biggest shift for me, I think, was to acknowledge the systems and the impact that that's had on my body. So just even acknowledging the harm of colonialism. For the longest time, I lived not even acknowledging that because I was so steeped in whiteness or supremacy culture. I think that just acknowledging the systemic harm of colonialism and the patriarchy and capitalism and all of those things, I think really helps me to say, okay, this is my body. I've been marinating in this kind of soup of these systems. How can I choose healing? How can I not shame myself? How can I not blame myself any longer and see that this is sort of greater than me, and I can use my healing gifts to kind of step out of those systemic harm pieces. So that's like the first thing. And I think creating safety in my body has been like such a big teaching, especially just over the last couple of years. Just noticing that I've never felt safe in my body and doing certain practices like breath work or ceremony or just simply standing barefoot on the earth, creating, for me, it's been somatic practices that have created more capacity for me to be present in my body. And that's taken time. And I know how hard it is. So I'm not saying like, oh, this is so easy, just go stand on the earth and you'll be back in your body. It's a journey.
One of the things that you talk about with your somatic practices is also recognizing capacity. Can you
Mm,
speak a little bit more about why recognizing capacity is so important?
yes. This was like something turned on my brain. Like, oh my goodness, how have I never asked myself that question before? But I think even I was really steeped in this colonial culture, this capitalistic culture of like, you must push through, you must hustle, you have to do everything at the expense of your body and your energy. And capacity was just such like, really just asking yourself, do you have the capacity to say yes to this? Do you have the capacity to offer this? I think it was as a healer because I did so many healings for so many beings over 15 years that I realized how far I had pushed past my capacity so many times. There was like this big grief, this big time in my life where I felt a lot of grief for not listening to what my capacity was. So it's so important to listen to how much energy we have for all the things in our lives and coming back to that question. I believe I come back to that question at least 5 or 10 times a day. Do I have the capacity for this? And it's speaking it out loud, just saying, I don't think I have the capacity for that at this time. And it's a practice. So I'm still practicing, but it's very important that we don't get burnt out. I mean, I've gone through so many cycles of burnout. So I'm learning it still too.
So am I. And yeah, it is something that is continuous. And that's what I think is such a beautiful opportunity to welcome people to a continuous practice and checking in with yourself throughout the day. I feel so many times people just want, here's my morning practice and I'm done. And then maybe I'll have one in the evening. And then they don't recognize that it's okay to make space for themselves throughout the day,
Mm-hmm.
right? To not compartmentalize. And for me, you speak about humility. I also come from a tradition of humility where you're no greater or lesser than. So, how can humility, as you say here, that connects us to all, teach us to have those check ins, teach us about our capacity? How can humility teach us about our capacity?
I always see humility as an invitation to see that we are as bright as the stars, or that we are as brilliant as the flowers that are kind of flowing out of the earth. I always feel like it's an invitation not to shrink. And I think that checking in with our capacity throughout the day, it's like an invitation to the sacred. It's an invitation to know that you are sacred, a sacred part of creation. And if you check in with your capacity, then you're actually honoring yourself as sacred, your body, your time, your energy, your medicine. And you're right. We can't compartmentalize that. It needs to be a practice throughout our day that flows, that becomes second nature, that actually becomes a part of what flows through our waters. And it's informing us always. So I always think, humility is an interesting teaching, because I feel like our world will be like, don't boast yourself, don't be too tall, don't speak so, I don't know, amazing things about yourself. Like stay humble. And I just think it's sort of like a quiet reverence for the sacredness of our being. And we honor that by asking about our capacity throughout the day.
Mm. I'm curious, as you say these words, and as we're still kind of in this dream time, we've spoken of deer and otter and other beings, but how can the plant kingdom teach us about humility and capacity?
Goodness, I mean, plant beings and plant medicine they're such beautiful allies for us. The one thing, I think they're always there for us, offering us gifts. So I think that it teaches us about gratitude and reciprocity, and not to take more than we need. I think those are really important teachings from the plant kingdom. And they have, I believe that they are here to have this reciprocal relationship with us. And I think, yeah, having that, knowing even asking what their capacity is. Do you have the capacity to offer this medicine to me today? I'm going to give back in gratitude. I think that those are important teachings from the plant kingdom, and how we honor those medicines, and not using them in a way that we're using up their capacity, maybe, and just like being, I don't know, using them for profit, or to just, yeah, I guess abuse them in ways. I think that they're there as beautiful teachers in that way.
Now, I love the topic of reciprocity, and I'm hoping that we can make it a buzzword, just like sustainability has,
Mm.
right? And moving really backwards to that idea of reciprocity as colonization moves forward, I guess, in their thing. So let's talk a little bit about reciprocity. What does that mean? Can, in your own words, for people that don't come from First Nation ways of living in reciprocity, and yes, you said don't take more than you have, or need, but how do you really convey that to most of the world that is taught to just take because they quote unquote need it?
Mm. I think it's a challenge. I think that this is a huge teaching that can somehow, you're right, that can fill up the world with its wisdom. I think it's about seeing all of creation as kin, and not, um, I feel like the colonizer came into our lands and just said, we need this, we're going to take this, we have ownership. So I think it's about like a power imbalance. Somehow, when you're seeing yourself as greater than, more entitled to, then you're going to take more than you need. So I know that it's important to have healthy entitlement. And I realize how much entitlement has turned into this like really harmful way of being with our relationship with the earth and each other. So I do think like even asking ourselves, like, how, like, where am I acting out of like unhealthy entitlement? Where am I feeling greater than, or like I have ownership over, or I can just take that without giving anything back. So even practicing with a plant, if you're going to take a plant medicine, that's practice, like getting down low in the earth, speaking and communing with the plant and saying, I'm so grateful for your presence. May I take a piece of you? Can I offer you something back for this? And asking, how do you want me to be used? How much can I take? Like all of those questions, I think helps to bring that lesson and teaching home in a way. And because you're right, I think that the majority of us have not been taught that. So that power over dominant energy takes up way more space than reciprocity.
How can we make amends to plants such as tobacco and the misuse of tobacco? What are ways that we can, that you would teach? I
Mm.
teach certain ways, but what would you teach?
I think it's interesting. I teach a lot about tobacco when I go speak to schools, and children are always so shocked that it's our sacred plant medicine, and that we use it in gratitude. So I think sharing stories, like storytelling about the nature of tobacco and how we used it as Indigenous people and continue to use it to this day, I think that's just like education helps to shift the narrative of that. And then I do encourage folks to use tobacco in a way where you're using it as an offering to the earth, to the land, to an elder, to a teacher, to a wisdom keeper. I think the act of doing that in a traditional way starts to shift the meaning of it. So I think that that's a beautiful way to do that. Growing your tobacco, growing your own tobacco, and then you can see this beautiful pink flower that comes from it and how gorgeous it is, and harvesting it in your own way. That can really change the relationship with it. So those are some of the things that come to the top of my head.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was just teaching a tobacco class, and someone was like, I don't think I even know what the plant looks like,
Mm,
because we're just presented with the end product, right? So I think also just figuring out what things look like. Do you have any favorite tobacco stories?
goodness. I think I think we were trying to grow it in our home last year, so that was just exciting. Just my children starting to see how it grows and how big it gets as the leaf gets bigger, and that it's just so beautiful to pass those teachings down. They're teachings that weren't passed down to me in that way. So reclaiming, having that in our home, and it being a practice where we're putting it out on the land. And we went to some elder teachings about a month ago, and my son gifted the elder with tobacco, and just seeing that happening, it's just it. I don't know. There's nothing like that. It's just like we're reclaiming and healing all that generational trauma, and that means so much to me.
You said something really important. I feel is that part of your story or your lesson was growing it, right? And
Mm,
yet we don't teach that in the greater world, that a lesson could just be growing something,
right.
right? And what I find interesting too is that I spoke to a lot of people during the pandemic, and I was supporting a lot of people, and there was a lot of people in the Black Lives Matter movement I was like, how are you dealing with it? They're like, I'm just surrounding myself with plants. All I do is like water my plants, and I go to the rallies and I water my plants, and that's what's nurturing me. I don't know why. All of a sudden, I just had this instinct to go buy a bunch of plants.
Mm,
And so I love that an instinct that we have deep inside of us when we truly need nurturing and truly are nurturing a change and a shift of consciousness is to go to the plant kingdom, not to consume it, but to grow with it.
mhm. Yes, I love that so much. It's so beautiful.
It, it is. It is so much. Any other fun things that you're growing these days?
No, I haven't started. I have to grow things inside for now. So,
Yeah.
because it's cold outside, but no, we'll probably start our growing fairly soon. But I haven't really planned out what I want to grow this year. It's going to be, yeah, I'm not sure yet.
Mm, beautiful. I've been trying to grow corn here.
Oh,
Hopefully, hopefully this year we cleared a field, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. But I am surrounded by some beautiful citrus these days, and it's very nice and hot weather when you're working outside to be able to pick some citrus and be nurtured.
I bet.
Yeah. So, Asha, you have some more offerings that are becoming public to the world. Would you like to share some of your offerings so that we know how to be even more supported by your medicine?
Oh, yes. Well, my Oracle deck, the Sacred Medicine Oracle, is coming out the end of February. So that is really exciting. It's a dream come true after, goodness, I think dreaming about it for 20 years. It's finally come into fruition. So that will be released, and it is filled with Indigenous medicine teachings and really supporting those who want to reclaim and reconnect and then rise and walk their medicine in the world. So that feels like a really supportive tool for folks who want to use that in ceremony or ritual or just a daily card pull. That's really exciting. And then I will have actually, I'm having another deck come out the next year. So that will be an animal spirit deck, but that's a ways away.
Hmm. Do you have any more books you're writing soon?
No, not yet. I'm gonna have to work on the other deck first. And to be
Mhm.
honest, I feel like I poured many, many words into that first book. So I'm waiting to something for next to drop in, but I really poured as much medicine as I could into the first one. So we'll wait and see.
No, I agree. It's pretty comprehensive in how much you share. I keep reading it over and over. It's definitely one of my go-tos myself when I need support, just to be reminded that there are others, that are out there speaking of the medicine and allowing us to be medicine.
Oh, thank you.
Any last stories, words, or anything that you want to share with us, Asha? That your dreamscape and time, any prayers, anything?
I loved how you said that this time was like dream time because I feel that too. So I would just invite us maybe to just come into our heart and come into your heart before your dream time tonight and just ask what messages your ancestors want to offer you. What does the quiet want to reveal to you? And just see if that changes anything tonight.
Mm, that's beautiful. To prepare for sleep and to dream again.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Asha. Thank you so much for spending time here. Many blessings to you and yours on your journey. And thank you again for being the medicine.
Thank you for having me.
Once again, it is with deepest gratitude that I bow to you for joining me on this podcast, this episode, this circle, this plática, this meditation, this remembering. I hope that you have stayed curious. I hope to see you in the circle again next week. So make sure that you like or follow. Until then, may you be blessed with abundance of peace and radical self-love.